joined on the line now by a guy who put in 15 seasons in the NFL, last 4 here in Buffalo, made a Pro Bowl while he was here. Lorenzo Alexander, formerly of The Lowdown, on this very show, joining us here after spending some time in Western New York and Southern Ontario recently. And we'll get into the reasons why in just a second. But Zoe, thanks for giving us some time. How you been?
I've been great. I'm blessed, just like we talked about a few minutes, offline, man, trying to be like Steve Tasker every single day, doing a little bit of media now.
Yeah.
Get a chance to see my kids play ball. It's really fun just to kind of be retired in that second phase and still being impactful in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, and you're still involved with your foundation. You were up in Welland, Ontario, doing some flag football stuff. Tell me about your take on flag football. It's really be getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Now it's going to be an Olympic sport. This right. Next Olympics, you've been involved with it from the early onset, and it is really exploding, right?
Yeah, it's exploding, and it's really been coming on strong. I think a lot, around when concussion, CTE, I think really allowed this sport to start thriving and showing people that there are additional ways to kind of get into the sport. And I see it as, a couple of things, right? You can become a professional in this sport, as we're seeing when you talk about playing for your country. Goodell talked about having women's flag football, obviously having potentially a professional league. And then on the boys tackle side, it's a really good entry point for young boys to develop the skills needed to be a good football player and working on footwork and catching and all those things without necessarily having to endure contact at a certain early age. So I think it has a lot of good resources and reasons why you should play. Especially on the girls' side. My daughter played high school here. It's an AIA, high school sanctioned sport, and so that's when I firstly got immersed into it for the girls' side. And going up there to Walden and seeing all the people over there in Ontario and the girls, the talent, and seeing some of the top teams in the country and that talent that's associated with it was really cool to see. And just really happy for girls now having these avenues from the Olympics, hopefully a professional league one day, and then even college scholarships that are beginning to come online, especially here in the States.
Yeah, because they're really starting it, at the grassroots level. I mean, they had high school programs that are, popping up like weeds here in Western New York, and it's gotten to the point where these high school coaches are now pushing the districts to have modified teams at the middle school level
right.
to kind of have a feeder system. I mean, that's the kind of exponential growth we're talking about here.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest separator right now, right? A lot of girls that are currently playing grew up playing softball, volleyball, soccer, those type of sports, and that is what I see is like the biggest gap right now when you go and watch girls play. They're uber athletic and talented, but some of just the football IQ, some of the I guess skill or motor skills that you'll see some of the boys have that they haven't developed quite yet. Is because of that lack of pipeline. And so that's really what the NFL is getting around. I know the Bills, Preston Teague is doing a big job of trying to develop that pipeline, get the coaches up, because the game is different than tackle. And so you have to approach it differently. Also, coaching girls is different as well. And so making sure that we are having a wraparound type of service and development for all parties involved. And so that our young ladies that are in the sport can thrive and be the most impactful human beings as possible.
You also held a mini apply pressure clinic for youth football players here at the training center a weekend or two ago. Tell us a little bit about what that's about.
Yeah, it's really cool, and that's one of the cool parts of still being connected with the organization, obviously with Sean and Brandon still being there, and then Will Greenberg, who is now the strength coach, who was a strength coach when I was there, having those relationships, giving me access to be able to bring in a group like Breaking Barriers that's local there in Buffalo and really help these young men obviously see themselves being a part of the Bills organization. One day we had Curtis Hemingway, we had Miles Dawson, who was the son of a scout that's up there, speak to these young men as well as far as how they service outside of being the traditional athlete, right? But they work in the legends community, working in statistics, and engineering, analytics, and then also having guys like Chris come in and speak about what you do on the business side. So it was just really cool to share with them that aspect of what it means to be part of a professional organization, but then also go through some drills and stuff in the weight room and show them what it looks like if they want to take their game to the next level, right? Whether that's a starter, get a college scholarship, and then hopefully maybe for a couple of them, have an opportunity to play at the highest level. So it was just a really fun day to develop young men, real men, as I say, and help them see themselves in a multitude of different ways.
What do you feel? Because I know there are always surprises when you host these kinds of, growth type events. The questions you get sometimes. What were some of, the more interesting questions that maybe made you even think for a second or two?
Well, at this point, I've heard it all. I have 3 teenagers, right? One is an adult now. I have 2. So there's really no questions that really throw me off. I think the biggest thing is really cool to see is like, once they realize like some opportunities and options that they weren't aware of. And then number 2, how hard they actually have to work, right? To become that individual they need to be. And then also the things that you have to do, some of the sacrifices you have to do. And they're like, you have to really do that? I'm like, yes, if you want to be elite. And when I'm talking about elite, it's not just a football player, but really anything you want to do in life, there's a cost that's associated with that. And so just having that light come on for those young men is really cool to see. And then also, the fun part, getting up on the board with them and kind of going through some football IQ stuff to help them in that aspect as well.
So you're busy. I know that. How much time you spending, if any, getting ready for this draft? Are you thinking about players? Or how much because I know that it's hard to keep. Brownie and I do because
we have to.
We do it because it's our thing, right? Yeah. What's your level of connection with the NFL and what's going on right this moment in this off season?
Yeah, a lot of things is really cool. So, as a former player, now I have a lot of time, and I live in Arizona where there's an Exos, and that's where a lot of young men train to prepare for the draft. So I had an opportunity to train 6 or 7 young men. Also, a young man by the name of Devin Allen, who played for the receiver for the Eagles, did some Olympic training. He has a god brother that I got to train out of Montana, Hayden Harris, big D-line outside linebacker, and then Ben Morrison, who is a local product here, who was a big-time cornerback out of Notre Dame, who I've known since he was a baby. And so because I have these personal relationships, I'm in the space, right? But I'm not like doing with Mel Kiper and coming over all these mock drafts. That's not what I care about. I'm care about helping these men develop, understand what the NFL, what it takes, right? Once they get there, maximizing that opportunity and then really being a resource to them to help them navigate. And so that's kind of my aspect of the draft is how can I be a resource to these young men trying to achieve their dream and really impact their communities to the next level.
Yeah, and, Benjamin Morrison is an interesting case because, as you probably well know, he's trying to come off a hip injury that required surgery. Yeah. And I think he just announced he's going to run, I think, April 21st, like 3 days before the draft to get everybody some numbers on his testing. Is that going to be right out there? You're going to be there for that?
Yeah, I'm going to be there. He's actually going to be running where he went to high school, Brophy Prep. And that's where actually Mason, my son is going to be going next year to start his high school career academically and football-wise as well. So I'll be out there checking him out. Like I said, they're a family friend. And, like the draft process, everybody, to me, it's a devaluing process at the end of the day. And we know what Ben can do on the football field. I don't believe his hips are going to be any issue, just the way how science has come, just knowing who he is as a young man, how hard he's going to work. His dad played in the league as well. So he has a lot of institutional knowledge. And I have complete faith in him and his work ethic as far as being healthy to go out there and help any team that he gets drafted by. Now, obviously, the Bills need some DB help, I think, and, with all they lost back there. And he's going to be a great young man, right, from a leadership standpoint, somebody you don't have to worry about, somebody that's going to raise the ceiling and really push others around him to make the team the best as possible. So he fits the Bills culture. I know that. I've watched him. I've seen him grow. And he would be a great pickup for anybody that gets him, especially, the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, because I mean, just looking at some of his tape, it's very good. And he, not only from a Bills DNA standpoint, but just from a physical standpoint, the Bills typically like long corners and, he's long framed. I mean, I know he's only 6 foot, but he seems long framed. You could probably speak to it better than I could, having stood next to him, but there just seems to be a lot to like there. So I think if he tests just good enough, like, I don't think he's got to blow up the stopwatch either. I mean, if he just tests well, I think he's going to be, maybe a late day 1, early day 2 pick.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if all things, being perfect in an ideal world without the injury, he's probably a top 10 pick, right? And so it's really, I think, going to come down to the doctors. I think they already know, based on all his exams, he's been doing really well in his rehab program. Obviously, when he goes out there and run and showcased on Monday the 21st is going to kind of be the last piece of that puzzle, so coaches can actually see the progress in with their own eyes. And to your point, late first round, but when you get talent like that, I think some people always gonna say, man, I like what I see. Let me try to get him as early as possible, because that's the type of guy that's going to be a culture changer and an organizational change, especially the way the NFL is played, where you got to have guys that can lock down the outside.
Great stuff. Thanks, Lorenzo. It's great seeing you, man. You look great. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, no, I appreciate it, man. I got these muscles for my 14-year-old son. You understand that, Steve. The bigger they get, they start trying to try you a little bit. So I've been in the gym pretty good hitting these weights.
Perfect.
Thanks for the time, Zoe. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, man.
Always.